but the hell and damnation that was going to come upon these people, and how there wasn't going to be or ever going to be any room for those types of people in that church. He spoke so ill of them, as if they weren't even worthy to breathe. I remember how wrong I felt and how horrible a message that was. And you know how when you're really embarrassed for somebody and you get that heat come over your neck? My ear, like if you could see me flesh, I was very flesh, and I didn't know why I felt such a sense of shame that day. But I really felt that day that I needed to get out of that church, and I was never going to come back. And that was the last day I went to church. It was sometime later that I actually realized that I was one of those gay people. But that always stuck with me. And so, even though I went to church, though, y'all have to understand, even though you go to church does not mean you have a relationship with God.
Yes.
That's when we start talking about tradition.
Say that one more time, man.
Just because you go to church does not mean you have a relationship with God. Everybody knows how to fake the funk. We all go to work every day and we go through the motions, but it doesn't mean that we care about it, and it doesn't mean that we put 100% into it. We can do that. We can show up the same and fake the funk at church. So at that time, I didn't really know what that was. As far as I was concerned, it was a bunch of getting up, standing, and kneeling, and quoting, Hail Marys, and using my rosary, and just doing whatever I needed to do to make it through that hour. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, when it comes down to tradition, you have to think that there's a lot of families, a lot of people that do things because that's the way it's always been done, and there's a lot of people that say things because that's what's always been said, and people do things because that's what was always expected. And one day I'm going to tie that back into what my point was, but when I finally came out, after I'd gone through all of the things that was expected of me, I felt liberated. I felt liberated, and that had nothing, I thought, to do with God. Had nothing to do with God at that point. Fast forward years later, like 10, 11 years later, I was going through a really, really rough time, and this lady walked into where I was working, and she looked all around me, and it freaked me out because it was like she targeted me specifically in a room full of people, and she looked at me dead in my eye and she says, "You need to choose a God." She said, "You need to choose a God." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, the things, your environment, the things that you're doing will take your life. And I remember being slowly like that hot feeling again in my neck, and I was like, okay, whatever. And I remember I was like, maybe I should go to church. Maybe I should go to church. But at the time I couldn't find anything, and I had forgotten about that for quite some time. But then when I think on those times, like I was really struggling, or there was an accident or something like that, and miraculously I got out of it. Like there was many times when seriously I was in this car accident, and I was rolling down the street, and it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was with my friends, and we were all trashed, we were drunk, and we hit this curb, and I swear to you that the car was turning in like 360s over and over again, and I saw everything in slow-mo, and I just knew that we were going to hit the guardrail, but we never did. It was like somebody pushed the car, turned it around, and set it back on its path like it was a toy. And I remember looking at everybody in the car's faces, and we all had that same look, and we never talked about it. And that's when it was apparent to me there had to be a God, and that I was supposed to be here a lot longer than maybe I thought.
That you had purpose.
Right.
Sometimes it takes something that's like life-changing to help you realize you have purpose. And sometimes it takes the loss of everything around you for you to realize that you have purpose. For you to be able to still function, breathe, and move about the cabin freely, even though everything has been stripped. That you cannot do that on your own power. You have purpose, and you're there for a reason. All of you are there for a reason. There's a purpose. You may not know it, you may not have found it, but it exists. And I think it would play a big role in your future if you were to sit and kind of contemplate what are your passions in life, because that may be a part of your purpose. You're not passionate about things accidentally.
That's true. I like to think your passions is things that God has purposely planted inside of you to serve a greater will, His will, right?
And it's kind of like a magnet. You'll find things that you kind of gravitate towards. You may not do them on a daily basis or all the time, but you kind of gravitate towards them. They make you feel really good, or you make you feel really accomplished.
And they're really easy for you.
Yeah, and it's like something like, from mine is poetry. I'm a writer, so it comes to me so easily, like this. And when I do it and I'm done with it, I feel so good about it. And when other people read it, they're like, man, I needed to hear that. And for me to be able to produce something out of my own body, my own mind and experience that someone else reads as a testament of myself, and it helps them to deal with what they may go through or what they happen to be going through at the moment that they didn't want to tell anyone, it makes me feel great. That has to be a part of my purpose because I'm so passionate about it. So I don't deny it. There's some times where I should pay more attention to it, but that's a part of my life also. That, like, I have things to grow on too. So
when you talk about purpose, a lot of people think that purpose is something that you one day get to or one day achieve, but what most don't understand is that you're already walking in the path of your purpose. You know what I mean? You might occasionally take detours because of some of the decisions that you make, but at the end of the day, like I said, in your struggles, in your hard times, and your low points, God has always been there with you. He's never left. You know, just because you didn't necessarily realize or acknowledge that He was there, He's always there. He's just waiting for you to acknowledge Him and to tell Him that you need Him and that you love Him. But the path of your purpose has always been there since the framing of the world. You know, when He created the stars and the moon and the sun and the earth and the grass and all of those things, when He created man.
Yeah. He also created the idea of you.
Right.
And now you're here.
So you have to understand that God is not a man that He should lie, and that He doesn't make any mistakes, and there are no coincidences when it comes to who you are and how you were made. And so with that being said, you were not a mistake, and there was nothing about you that wasn't planned or purposed. Like I said, everyone is God's child. Everyone is purposed. Regardless if you know it or not, you have to know that your being gay does not mean that you are outside of God's will and you're outside of God's purpose.
At all.
You know, when we talk about detours, a lot of times when we get bumped off the path, it's not at all God's fault. It's because of something that you heard or something that somebody told you.
Human error, you know.
It's usually as a result of some interaction by one of your peoples. You know what I'm saying? And I remember when I finally did join the church, and I remember the elation and stuff that I felt at finally being able to find a church home, and celebrating my newfound knowledge that God was actually very present in my life, and the pain that I felt when I felt like my presence wasn't necessarily wanted, and that maybe there were some underhanded things going on as far as my membership there. It wasn't at all God's fault, but I remember the conversation being about my being gay, and how if I wanted to be a member and I accepted God, then I would need to know at some point in time that who I was not at all in alignment with God's will or God's ways. And so with that, I would be able to accept membership. And I remember I felt like my heart had been ripped out. And I remember crying to God that night, and I was like, why would you put me through all of this to finally come to know you and to believe in you and have faith in you and to know who you are, just so that I could feel this?